Hello, my name is John, and today we'll reading Trumpism Goes International by Joel Farkas on American Greatness, posted October 23rd, 2017. Joel Farkas is the founder, Gateway American Resources. He also serves on the board of directors of the Claremont Institute and the American Strategy Group. You wouldn't know it from listening to the mainstream media, but some powerful left-wing European and Asian countries are emulating Donald Trump's economic plans, including tax cuts, regulatory reforms, and fair and equitable trade policies. These reforms are America's most historic economic changes in 25 years, for which President Trump has been roundly criticized. Even so, influential nations are not only copying these policies, they are also describing them as historical cultural shifts. Deciphering America's mood and what's going on in the heart of the country won the election for Trump, but the president has also tapped into the world's mood, and other countries have picked up on his agenda. This is radical and revolutionary stuff. Practices, proposals, legislative changes, and economic agendas unseen since the Reagan presidency are once again on the table. What is fascinating is how little awareness of these events the American press or elected officials seem to have, nor do they have any idea of their significance. Two examples: France and India. European and South Asian countries that are the world's 6th and 7th largest economies, 2.5 trillion for France and 2.3 trillion for India. These are not insignificant examples, considered India also is the world's largest democracy with 1.2 billion people. Macron's surprising reforms. France recently elected Emmanuel Macron as president, and he appointed Bruno Le Maire as finance minister. Macron in July told the French media he would cancel a traditional press conference for Bastille Day, suggests via plebiscite or referendum that the size of the French parliament be reduced 1/3 to address bureaucratic bloat, cut French tax rates, and take his message directly to the French citizens to rally support. I asked then, can such Trump-like assertions continue? Just 90 days later, earlier this month, Le Maire proclaimed, "The French need to know that we are determined to reduce their taxes." He stated that France's tax burden is far too high, and that they would cut corporate tax rates because that will create jobs. He also added that France would reform its labor markets because they need French and foreign companies to become more efficient. To drive home the point even further, Le Maire declared the government would make payroll tax cuts a permanent decrease in employers' charges, and that the country's problems won't be solved by more public spending. France would reduce rather than increase public spending because, as Le Maire explained, experience has shown us that more public spending was not leading to less unemployment. On the contrary, this is absolute opposite of what you hear daily in the U.S. press. These are the pillars of the French jobs proposed for economic reform, not rhetoric. They are active policies being presented for legislation to be passed into law and explained to French citizens, not a theoretical economic agenda. If you placed Macron on the American political spectrum, he would certainly be categorized as a liberal or progressive. France is part of the European Union, not isolationist or protectionist. One could argue the French are generally globalists, but they know that what hasn't worked. Their countries are in stress, their economies are in trouble, and they want to fix it. As the French press pointed out that the new administration might be emulating Trump, have their policy assertions been raised as a matter of global or political embarrassment? As a matter of fact, yes. In a recent interview regarding French government efforts to require U.S. tech companies to pay more French taxes, U.S. tech companies such as Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon all do business in France, but because of 28 different EU tax laws, skirted paying virtually any French taxes. The current French administration stated they wanted to impose an equalization tax on U.S. tech companies. A reporter asked, "Isn't that like President Trump's protectionism?" Le Maire answered, "It has nothing to do with protectionism. It has to do with equity and with fairness." Guess who else has described foreign taxation and tariffs as a tool for fairness? Trump, of course. When questioned further, Le Maire replied, "I don't want to criticize U.S. tax reform. I want to introduce very important tax reform in France." Firing Inspector Raj in India. The notion of fair and equitable trade is a sovereign nation's prerogative, and reducing taxes to create jobs is what France is fighting for, as it is India. India is a very different country than France, although it appears close based on the relative scale of their national economies. Yet India is emulating Trump in the same, if not identical, ways of France. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has recently passed both tax and regulatory reform, described as the biggest reforms in the past 70 years, the most ambitious since independence from British colonial rule, in fact. The Indian Parliament approved the Goods and Services Tax, GST, a flat tax reform to eliminate tedious compliance and simplify tax burdens. Modi declared the GST would create a tax system that will be transparent, simple, and keep tabs on corruption. GST will end tax terrorism and Inspector Raj, two big hurdles to the country's growth, Modi said. Less regulation would mean less babudom. Inspector Raj and babudom are pejorative terms for regulators who incessantly hassle Indian businesses. Indian leaders know tax and regulatory reform had to happen. So many citizens and businesses view their government with distrust and hostility, and an increasing number of Indians openly despise their political leaders. The French finance minister describes tax reform as not only changing tax policies, but the tax culture. Both India and France looked at reform efforts as culturally and historically significant. Both countries have many citizens who dislike their governments because of their history of confiscatory tax and regulatory burdens. That's what is happening in French and Indian experiences, not a left or right-wing perspective or economic theory. This is empirical experience of what regulations and taxation does to countries, and they don't want it anymore, just like Trump and his supporters don't want it anymore. This video is a production of the School of the White Crane. My name is John Brooker, and you can contact me through commentary on this video or through my Gmail listed here. Please share this video with family and friends and in social media. May God richly bless you.